Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Paul Heinrich, and I'll be chairing this meeting, the Development Committee, this morning, Thursday, 9th of May 2024. For anyone who hasn't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our reports and offer technical advice sit either side of me at the top table. In front of me in the central area sit the members of the committee who will be making decisions on the items on the agenda. And officers, introduce themselves, please. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Lyon. I'm the Development Manager.
Good morning. I'm a Senior Planning Officer.
Lauren Gregory, Democratic Services.
Imogen Mole, I'm Senior Landscape Officer at Arboriculture.
Fiona Croxon, Solicitor to the Council.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome members of the public who are present here today and those who are viewing the meeting remotely. For those members of the public who've registered to speak, I'll call you to the front to the end of this bench when it's your turn. Usual notices. Fire alarm, we're not expecting a drill today, so if the alarm does sound, it is genuine, in which case please follow officers using the marked exits and make your way to the car park in the front of the building or to the flagpole at the rear of the building. Could I ask you to please turn mobile phones to silent or to off? We'll take a short break about 11, though I would hope we wouldn't be going on that long this morning. Toilets, by the way, are out in the foyer directly opposite to the lift. So if we move now to item 2, apologies, please, Lauren.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received a few apologies today. Apologies have been received from Councillor Varley, Councillor Fisher, Councillor Neverway, Councillor Kimtoy and Councillor Hankins. And if I may, with the next item, Chairman, we have one substitute today, Councillor Callum Ringer for Councillor Kimtoy.
Thank you. Item 4 is minutes of the previous meetings. Those are for the meeting of the Thursday 21st March and the Thursday 4th April. Does anybody have any corrections or amendments for those minutes? In which case, are we able to approve them? Show of hands, please. Thank you. Item 5, items of urgent business. I have none.
None received.
Thank you. Order of business will be as on your papers. Item 7, are there any declarations of interest? Thank you. We therefore move to the substantive item 8 on your agenda, Catfield PF/23/2004. We have a presentation, please, Brent.
Thank you, Chairman. So the proposed development consists of the retrospective part change reviews of the existing agricultural machinery workshop and store and haulage depot to incorporate a containerized self-storage facility at Ledham Road in Catfield. So the historic use of the site as an agricultural machinery workshop and store and haulage depot was established directly after World War II by the Starkey's family. The business was taken over in 1980 by A.J. Shorten Limited Road Haulage Contractors, who initially leased the site before acquiring it in 2014. A.J. Shorten Limited Road Haulage Contractors is understood to have had an operator's license for 20 haulage vehicles together with its agriculture contracting vehicle machinery with associated workshop and staff office, goods delivery lorries, vans and cars producing vehicle movements to support the business needs, all with unrestricted hours of operations and access through the site. The site is surrounded to the north and south by agricultural lands and to the west by 4 residential properties and Ledham Water Tower, and to the east by 1 residential property known as Stentham and numerous business which form part of the industrial estate. So the dwelling known as Stentham, you can see to the right of the site, which is marked dwelling known as Stentham there. So the east of the site. So it was originally granted planning permission in January 1975 as an agricultural workers dwelling, and it was subject to an occupancy condition in that the dwelling should be occupied by the owner or employee of the adjacent agricultural business. So planning permission was granted in April 1991 to remove the condition of that of the adjacent business because it was substantially run down and it had become inappropriate and surplus to the requirements that the bungalow should continue to be occupied in connection with the business, thereby permitting the dwelling unrestricted occupancy. Later that year, planning permission was granted to change the use of the dwelling to an office in association with the use of the site as a builder's yard, which involved a new store and workshop. Subsequently, planning permission was granted in December 1991 for the erection of the workshop, office, and store. Norfolk County Council permission was granted in March 1999 for the change of use of the site from a former builder's yard to recycling yard and firewood production. A planning condition was secured that restricted the use of the site outside the hours of operation of 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Mondays to Saturdays and restricted operations altogether on Sundays and public holidays in order to protect the amenities of surrounding area. So planning permission was granted in March 2000, which allowed the change of use of the office to dwelling and associated with the recycling yard. Due to personal circumstances, the owner of Stanton sought to move to the site to ensure safety of operations and exclusion of unwanted public presence on sites out of hours, which might otherwise lead to a potentially hazardous situation in terms of public safety. So planning permission was granted that restricted the occupancy of the dwelling to a person employed in recycling business premises within which the building is situated, together with any resident dependents. The reasons for such conditions was that the site was situated outside an area in which the local planning authority normally doesn't allow residential development, and permission had been granted in this instance having regard to particular circumstances relating to the building. Furthermore, it was considered that the dwelling was unsuitable in terms of residential amenity for occupation by persons not associated with the adjacent business activities. So this is the history of the sites and also the dwelling. So regarding the principle of the proposal, so the scheme does not fall under the list of acceptable uses set out under Policy SS2. Policy SS5 seeks to support the rural economy, which is amplified by paragraph 89 of the NPPF, which make emphasis on planning policies and decisions recognizing that to meet local businesses and community needs in rural areas, sites may have to be found beyond existing settlements and in locations that are not well served by public transport. The applicant's case in support of the proposal is based on their understanding that AJ Shorten Limited Road haulage contractors had an operator's license for 20 haulage vehicles together with its agricultural contracting vehicle machinery. The operation had associated workshop and staff office could deliver lorries, vans, cars producing vehicle movements to support the business needs, all with unlimited 24-hour access for through all year round. While the proposal is considered departure from Policy SS1 and SS2, there are existing haulage operations taking place on the site, which will cease as a result of this proposal. The proposal is in general accordance with the requirements of Policy SS5 and paragraph 89 of the NPPF, which is a material consideration. In regards to the impacts of the proposal on the dwelling, Stanton, the proposed development lies adjacent to the proposed development lies adjacent to the dwelling, which is located east of the site. So the site boundary is comprised of a mixture of timber fence, hedge, and corrugated steel. So a row of 18 shipping containers measuring approximately 43 meters in length and 2.44 meters in height increased to 2.60 meters due to those being set above concrete blocks, replacing existing hedge boundary that has been cut down along the western boundary of Stanton. Concerns have been raised by the owner of Stanton that the proposed development would give rise to significant overbearing effects to the detriment of the enjoyment of their private garden area. Moreover, further concerns have been raised due to the volume of traffic entering and egressing the site, along with noise associated with the operations of the site. So, given these concerns, a vehicle movement survey and an acoustic assessment have been subsequently submitted with the application. The environmental health officer has raised no objections to objective conditions that restrict the hours of use, secure acoustic measures, drainage, artificial lighting, and pest management measures. The vehicle movement survey results have demonstrated that between the 3rd to the 9th of December 2023, between 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., only a maximum of 41 vehicle movements were registered. Between the period of 2005 to 2016, when AJ Shorten Limited Road haulage contractors operated the site, a maximum of 99 vehicle movements were registered. As such, the activities generated by the proposal are less than 50% of that which took place in the former periods. As a result, vehicle movements have reduced from 40 a day to 27 a day. Articulated lorry movements are now 4 a day compared with 99 in the period of 2005 to 2016. The results of the acoustic assessment were carried out in the same periods as the vehicle movement survey. The conclusions of the report highlight that the primary source of noise associated with existing business is from road traffic accessing the sites. A decrease in noise levels has been found due to the decrease in road traffic associated with the development. It was further concluded that noise levels are not particularly high and as such would not adversely impact the area. While the proposed development will result in less vehicle movements in comparison to those previously registered between 2005 and 2016, it is considered that due to the number, height, length, and 7-meter separation distance of the row of 18 shipping containers from Stanton, the proposed development will give rise to some overbearing effects to the detriment of the users of the dwelling and their enjoyment of their private garden area. Moreover, given that the position and orientation of the containers are not subject to any degree of control and may change over time, it is considered that installation of a 1.8-meter boundary fence will be required to help soften the boundary between the site and neighboring dwelling. On balance, while some impacts will occur, subject to conditions to secure appropriate boundary treatment and conditions to secure appropriate operation of the business, it is considered that the proposed development would comply with policies EN 4 and EN 13. So to conclude, the principle of the scheme is considered to be a departure from policy SS1 and SS2 in that it does not form part of the list of uses acceptable in a countryside policy area. However, there are material considerations that justify departure from the development plan as follows. There is an existing haulage business operating from the sites. The proposal will result in environmental benefits by reducing 50% of vehicle movements in comparison to those formerly operated by AJ Short and Limited Rural Haulage Contractors. And the scheme will provide economic and social benefits by supporting businesses, communities, and private users with a self-storage facility within a rural area. Also, the scheme is supported by policy SS5, which supports the rural economy, and paragraph 89 of the NPPF, which requires that proposals that meet local business needs and community needs may have to be found in rural areas. So given that the proposal will not give rise to concerns relating to landscape, design, environmental health, and highway matters, on balance, officers consider that it is acceptable subject to conditions. So these are the shipping containers. They're standard containers, 2.44 meters high by 6.1 meters length. This is the access to the sites and entry points. There are several businesses on this site. These are the first row of shipping containers. Stanton is just immediately to the right. This is the row of 18 shipping containers against the western boundary of Stanton. This is the dwelling. This is further west to the sides. This is a workshop and machinery and store. This is another photograph at the end of the sites. This road is Watering Peace Line Road. It's a private road. Anglia Water haven't raised any objections. And these are dwellings located to the west of the site. These are the key issues. And the recommendation is for approve, subject to imposition of conditions and any others considered necessary by the system directive planning. And this is the end of the presentation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah. What's on? Just to add in terms of updates that we've had since the report was published. So we have received some representation, which I believe one of them was circulated to members earlier this week from the Parish Council in relation to 2 additional sites. It was concerned that there are container storage activities going on those sites as well. In terms of how that affects your decision today, we don't believe those other 2 sites actually have a direct bearing in terms of your determination of this particular scheme. They're sites that I've raised with our enforcement team following this email we had this week. They are aware of one of the sites, but one of them they're not aware of, so they'll add that to their list to investigate further. But that doesn't have a direct impact on your ability to make a decision today. That's what I wanted to make clear. Thank you. Thank you. We move to speakers then. Could I call Jeffries, please? Parish Council, come to the end, please.
Am I okay to start?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, and thank you for allowing us to provide our input into this application. I would just like to make it clear today that I am representing Parish Council as Vice Chair and not in my capacity as Norfolk County Council. Catfield Parish Council are not averse to development or economic growth and take pride in seeing business and residents flourishing within our parish. Although this business is not of high employment or skill value, we are not opposed to the site being used as a storage business. What we are passionate about is ensuring that it is in line with the expectations of our residents and in keeping with the environment that they choose to live in. As with District Council, we are here to serve them. We welcome the concept of conditions set out in this application. However, we do not feel that some of the conditions are enforceable and therefore do not meet paragraphs 55 and 56 of the MPPF. We are pleased to see condition 7 with reference to opening times, as this is more consistent with the overall business model on the other Storgar Law sites. However, there is no physical access control to the site, so regardless of the restrictions in hours, there is no way to stop people from accessing their storage when they feel it suits them. A timed physical barrier would be a more sufficient way of addressing this. We have great concerns in the way the noise pollution and traffic monitoring has been carried out. It is not a true reflection of the reality of comings and goings on the site, and there are suggestions that there is manipulation, for example, by ensuring that the containers closest to Stanton are empty. In this context, it may be relevant that Storgar Law also has containers on nearby sites behind Flowgas and the applicant's barns at Grove Farm, of which planning status is uncertain. With this in mind, we strongly feel that a simple garden fence laid out in condition 3 is insufficient to reduce the noise and that secure acoustic measures must be reconsidered, as was suggested in discussions earlier on in this process. The officer has set out the environmental considerations in policies EN4 and EN13. Residents have the right to adequate privacy levels and to be kept free from excessive noise and unwanted social contact. The unenforceable conditions lend to both excessive noise and unwanted social conditions. Where possible, reduce noise pollution. This can be robustly achieved through secure acoustic measures. Proposals will only be permitted where individually or cumulatively there are no unacceptable impacts on the environment and general amenity, health and safety of the public and air quality. Catfield Parish Council believe that conditions 3 and 7 do not meet the criteria and they are unenforceable, therefore not meeting EN4 and EN13 policies. We strongly urge the committee to protect our resident and reject those conditions as they are currently put forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One objecting speaker, Mr. Glenn David Bunting. Okay, come to the microphone, please. Yeah, and you'll have three minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, I'd like to say that I'm not totally against this business in general, but it needs to include workable conditions that take into account my rights to peaceful enjoyment of my family home and garden for 24 years. I thank also the planning team for recognising it in their environmental health assessment that strict adhesion to conditions is essential to safeguard my residential amenity, which include restricting the current access, advertised access, 24 hours, and erecting an acoustic fence to reduce the noise from the containers. However, the fence is now downgraded to a garden fence, probably from B&Q, and operating time still includes Sundays. In the original planning application, a great deal of fuss was made about security being crucial to any storage business, but there is no security whatsoever included. This enormous admission would render any time restrictions useless, with people coming and going as they please, which has already led to many unwanted and very unpleasant incidents in the middle of the night. There is no one who is meeting between the containers out of sight of the road, which is very worrying for me as I haven't slept well for 7 years. Security, again, is extremely important and can easily and affordably be achieved on the site by fencing in far end of each double block of the containers and incorporating a sliding time lock gate on the fronts. If they can't get in, they won't come out of ours. As I only have 3 minutes, I cannot address all the factual errors within the proposal. But if the applicant can't even get the site address correct, then how reliable is other data? For example, only 41 vehicle movements for a whole week in December, when I have video evidence of 62 movements in one day on the 29th of April. I believe that there has been potential manipulation of information by moving people out of the row near me to one of the other store galore sites in Catfield or Ludham that probably are operating without the correct planning consent. And with the worst two offenders on holiday in France, also the two detractors of AJ Shorten that did not go out all week when the noise and traffic survey was done. Again, AJ Shorten has no operator's licence as it was surrendered on the 31st of the 12th, 2018. At that time, they had 6 lorries. Clearly, if security cannot be achieved to protect us, then this is not the right site for store galore. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I have one supporting speaker, Mr. Graham Tuddenham, if you care to come to the front, please. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thanks to the committee for allowing me to address this matter. I'm going to be very short because if you read the details that's set out in your officer's report, and it's more than one officer, it was a team of officers have set out a report in some detail, and I don't particularly want to waste your time. So I'll just be very short before I deal with a couple of matters raised by objectors. The application was lodged 7 months ago and has now come forward following consideration of evidence supplied by the applicant through myself and specialist consultants measuring traffic flows and noise levels. I have no desire to comment in detail on the objectors' representations other than to say they have been addressed in the report by the planning management team, and I'm sure your council's solicitor. I understand that Mr. Taylor, one of Catfield's local members, called in the application, given his reasons for doing so as being singular in that it was due to operating hours should be reduced on Sundays. The parish council, so I'm informed, fully understand the need for Sunday access. The report before you sets out your officer's proposals that Sunday operating hours should be limited to commence at 10 a.m. and close at 5 p.m. The applicant would actually prefer 9 till 4, but I think that's a minor detail. Chairman, may I ask and request members of your committee grant approval in line with the recommendations set out within the report before you. Just a short comment on one or two comments by the objector. This is a business site. It is an industrial site, and there are industrial applications going on there. And I believe there's no issue regarding pollution. There's no issue regarding traffic. And on that basis, I think you can take it from me and from your officers that really there is no objection to this proposal whatsoever. It's an industrial estate that's been recognised since just after World War II. I think I can leave it at that because there is just no foundation in the objections. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And lastly, we go to the local members. You want to go first, Councillor Taylor?
I will go first, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Lawrence, could you pull up the picture for me of the containers and the bungalow?
The officer's presentation or the photos that were supplied by Catfield
No,
Parish?
give me officer's presentation, please. Sorry. If you could just go back. Yeah, that one there. Thank you. Am I okay to start now, Mr. Chairman? Yep, sorry, yep, okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We called this application to Development Committee today, not because we are completely opposed to it, but because we do not feel that the conditions attached are strong enough to protect the residential property that borders the application site. As with all applications considered here, a weighting and a balance must be found, and it is in my opinion that as it stands with the condition list, that balance has not yet been fairly struck. My appeals to you today are based on this foundation, and I will now clearly state the amendments I would like to see brought forward before consent of change of use is given. Number one, I would like to see the containers moved by an appropriate distance to ensure they aren't visible from the neighbouring property. And really, at this point, I would just like to refer to that picture. That is the boundary line. You know, the boundary is a wall of metal shipping containers. And I'm sure all of us can appreciate if we were living in that property, we would not want to wake up every single morning and look at that. Number two is further restrictions on operating hours to remove usage on a Sunday. And number three is the erection of a solidly built acoustic fence with concrete posts and gravel boards, just to mitigate the noise impact from the usage which will occur on that site. I don't find this to be a prohibiting list of requests, and I know these have already been considered by the council. I think if implemented, this would provide a positive gain to the existing resident who has lived in his home for 24 years. For context, this is an issue that I first got involved with over a year and a half ago. It's gone through the full enforcement process, which has led us to today. The situation I first witnessed was appalling, that wall of metal, which the residents had to constantly look out through their bedroom window. The noise implications of people opening and closing their containers were so significant it caused them to move bedroom in their home. I think this needs to be considered. The physical and mental health concerns caused by the containers to the residential amenity of the land have been dire. Mr. Bunting has told me he hasn't had a good night's sleep in 7 years as a result. This is why I think the condition list that I set out earlier is fair. It will block the containers from view, it will limit the noise impact of the site and give the residents a day off from activity on the site. We aren't pushing for refusal. As Kevin and I, of course, support local businesses, but we are saying this needs to be done in a sustainable and sensible way. Further, two of these suggestions, the operating times and the acoustic measures, have been recommended by the council's own environmental protection team in an earlier report. And I think they're right. The recommendation needs to be followed. In addition, I have concerns over the opening hours of usage being enforced, given there is no on-site presence. So it would be sensible to add security gates to each row of containers that could be locked up when the site is not in use. I think to ensure both safety and protection for both the users of the containers and local residents, I think this is a necessary step to take. My point of view is that if the application is so weak it becomes unviable to proceed with these conditions attached, it simply isn't robust enough to be approved. So I appeal to you as my fellow North Norfolk councillors to see the balance here and acknowledge that the impacts on the residents neighbouring outweigh the gain at present. Just to reiterate, I would like to see the containers moved by an appropriate distance to ensure they aren't visible from the residential property, a further restriction on operating hours to remove usage on a Sunday, and a solid built acoustic fence with concrete posts and gravel boards to mitigate that noise impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Bayes, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to concur with what all has been stated. We are not against the proposal, but unfortunately, we do feel the conditions attached are not adequate to protect Mr. Bunting's right to privacy. The conditions need to reflect a fair balance between a business operating and the privacy of a neighbouring resident. The key elements that we are concerned with are the removal of the acoustic fence, not withdrawing the containers away from the boundary, and the opening hours and subsequent management and security of this site outside the proposed opening hours. I would like to provide some context regarding the resident, Mr. Bunting, who has and will continue to be impacted by the business. Mr. Bunting has lived at the property for 24 years and is used to a business operating next to his property. As you have already heard, before Store Galore, Chorlton's, a haulage business, operated from the site during that time. Mr. Bunting had no issue that weren't resolved through mutual respect. Over the 7 years, Mr. Bunting has struggled with the impact that this current business, Store Galore, has had on his health and well-being due to mainly his right and entitlement to adequate privacy. Mr. Bunting has had to move his bedroom to the opposite end of his property due to being woken up by noise of clients during turning up at various hours of the night to access their containers, and on occasions has been called upon and asked to assist in opening their containers. The access route to both Mr. Bunting's property and Store Galore is owned by Angler Water, as you've heard, has no restrictions regarding speed, and there is no physical control in place at Store Galore, therefore enabling clients to turn up whenever they want to access their containers. I would like to draw your attention to the officer's report regarding the environmental part, which states the following consideration. Residents have the right to adequate privacy levels and to be kept free from excess noise and unwanted social contact. I was shocked when I visited the site and saw the solid row of blue shipping containers, 18, as stated in the report, measuring 43 metres in length, 2.4 metres in height, which have been increased to 2.6 metres due to those being set on concrete blocks. These containers are hard against Mr. Bunting's boundary. They are 0.73 metres higher, 2.5 feet, above the height of a 6-foot fence. A solid line of blue containers which Mr. Bunting and his family have to look at every day. The noise from these containers make when being accessed by clients for storing goods or removing goods is significant. The Environmental Health Team recommended acoustic measures and strict opening times, as can be seen in the report, as well as other conditions deemed essential to safeguard nearby resident amenity and prevent both unacceptable levels of noise and transference beyond the site boundary and waste into the environment. The noise and traffic monitoring survey that was undertaken and used to make the decision by removing the acoustic fence does not provide a true reflection of what happened in reality and is significantly different to that of Mr. Bunting's experience regarding the visits to the site. Concerns have been raised over the parameters that were put in place for the survey in terms of the data collected. The issue regarding the opening hours and security of the site are of concern, and established clients have for the past 7 years been able to access the site whenever they have wanted. And this will be extremely difficult to change that mindset or expectation. As has already been mentioned, there are no physical controls in place to prevent access outside of the recommended hours of business. I fear that this will only create further complaints and enforcement issues being raised to the planning department for the foreseeable future. We feel that the opening hours should not include Sundays. Mr. Bunting himself is not allowed to open his business on a Sunday, and surely Mr. Bunting and his family are entitled to a 1 day of peace. My fellow councillor has already reiterated, we would like to see 1, the containers removed to an appropriate distance from the boundary to ensure that they are not visible from Mr. Bunting's property. 2, further restrictions on opening hours and security in place to ensure that this is managed. Removal of Sunday opening hours. And 3, a solid built acoustic fence erected with concrete posts and gravel boards. We believe that these conditions are viable and deemed necessary for the well-being of Mr. Bunting and his family. I would simply finish by asking my fellow councillors what measures they would expect to be put in place if this impacted on them in a similar way. What we are requesting is a fair and balanced outcome for our resident and Store Galore. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bays. I have to say I have some sympathy with some of the points you're making there. Certainly in terms of the permitted hours proposed, it does concern me as to how they can be enforced if there is no security around the site. Members may wish to consider that. Some of the better acoustic fence. So obviously open to you to propose any amendments you wish to conditions you think those appropriate. So with that in mind, over to members. Who wishes to go first? Yes. Councillor Senior Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have sympathy with this application, and I'm actually quite surprised. One question I'd like to ask the officer: was there any consultation to determine the hours with the local residents prior to make an addition of 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night, or 2100 hours at night? Because that seems quite late to me for a business to be run. I would merely like to suggest that we maybe reduce the hours, especially in the evening part, because it seemed very late to me that somebody could turn up at 9 o'clock at night, stop banging containers around. Would this be a consideration? Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. So no, we haven't consulted with the local businesses in terms of the hours of operation. We had in consideration the operations, historic operations of the site. So they had obviously unlimited access, unlimited hours of operations, and obviously that was the main consideration. We did consult their environmental health, and we had in consideration as well other business hours of operation. The environmental health set up these hours because they seem reasonable, having into consideration the historic use of the site.
Add to that. So we did consult, as Bruno said, the environmental health team, and they've suggested 7 till 8 Monday to Friday, 7 till 6 on Saturdays, but they have suggested that no opening on Sunday, bank or public holidays. Was the applicants made a request to have that included in the proposal? So it's that balance showed, isn't it? What's the benefits against the harms, and can we reach an appropriate sort of compromise anyway?
Am I correct in your report that you said you're expecting only 50% of the traffic during the day, rather than the 100% of traffic? So surely if the reduction in the traffic going to this site is probably what's going to happen, wouldn't that mitigate bringing the hours down a little bit?
So that 50% reduction was in comparison with the historic use of the sites. So it's a 50% less use, but we have to consider, on balance, what was previously there, the operations that were on that site to the current operations of the site. It's talking about 20 licensed for 20 haulage vehicles, so there's a lot of movement on that site for a number of years. So obviously now with the current proposal, that there is a reduction on 50% of those movements. So we had to consider that, and on balance, we thought that obviously that was acceptable. And that's why we asked for the reports. Of course.
Can I just follow that up? If the historic use of the site allowed 24-hour use as a haulage operation, and clearly it's understandable why that would need to be. This is not a haulage operation. This is a different type of business. Should we be considering historic uses and historic times of operation when we're looking at a different business? I mean, you have to assess each case on its merits. We all know that that general sort of mantra, but obviously we have to think about what's the fallback in planning terms. If we refuse permission here, what could they carry on doing on the site without intervention from the planning authority? So in theory, if they could go back to that haulage 24 hours, you could have an impact on that neighbour all hours of the day. So it's about trying to find, as you say, a compromise here to allow business to exist, but to exist in a way that doesn't cause harm to the amenity of adjoining properties. And that's the key issue. And we recognised in the report that there will be some impacts on the neighbour, but through appropriate conditions, and obviously we can agree to find a detail of precisely what those conditions are. But it's with those conditions, we think we will reach an appropriate compromise. But obviously the choice and the decision is yours as a committee. You can add or amend those conditions as you see fit. I mean, there have been some questions raised about the enforceability of condition 7. It's like any condition where we specify hours of use. If people breach those hours of use, then we can enforce for a breach of condition notice. So there are processes in place. Obviously, we won't have officers outside every day checking whether they're 1 minute past the hour, but obviously we get reports of breaches of conditions and we can take action, and we are usually successful in that action going to the magistrates court. Yeah, I have Councillor Toy and Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to officers for the report and everybody who's presented to us today. Actually, looking at the environmental health report, I think that strikes the balance that I think local members are suggesting in terms of moving the containers slightly, putting the fencing up. It also talks about vehicles not running. It talks about not having refrigeration there, paint spraying. There's a whole range of things there, and I think that is the place we need to be. Is with what environmental health are suggesting in their report. In terms of comparative use, in vehicle movements, maybe. In terms of noise, a lorry reversing in not on the boundary compared to people opening and closing the doors on those containers, particularly when they're not very full, is a very different sound profile. And in fact, I would suggest that potentially we could go further with the acoustic. It's a wooden. The suggestion here is for a wooden fence that will only last so long. Should we have planting done so that there is a natural acoustic boundary that in time will grow to replace the fence as it disappears? So that's where I am. I think you're right. We need to work out a condition and find a way to make this work. But I think environmental health laid that out fairly well for us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So you're proposing that as an additional condition?
Yes, I propose that we work with the conditions and laid out by environmental health.
Okay. Are you happy to include that? I am, but I'm also conscious that the applicant has asked for 107 containers on this site. And if we close the gap with the road from the opposite side, are we then too close in terms of the operational functionality of this storage facility? So I don't know. I mean, the applicants here, I don't know whether they wanted to comment on that, but obviously moving those containers away from the boundary will reduce the space on the site and might make it less operable in a safe way. Because obviously, if God forbid there was a fire in a container, you wouldn't want it to spread to all across the site. So it's about managing that safely. I don't think we're against the principle of having a fence or a hedge to help soften that. I think that's part of what we recognise in the report, but it's the consequences of pushing it too far back. I think the suggestion that it wouldn't be visible from the property, I think that might be going a little bit beyond what could be regarded as reasonable, because you may have extensions to houses that are visible to neighbours, but it doesn't make them unacceptable in planning terms. So it's trying to, again, key word here is acceptable compromise that we can reach to enable us to have. So presumably an acoustic fence would be an acceptable, though.
Yeah,
clearly
it needs to be moved from the boundary so we can get the fence in. That distance doesn't need to be great, does it?
Yeah, and I understand that there is some discussion about where the actual boundary is on the site. I think there's a telegraph pole you saw in the photographs. I think that was kind of, as I understand, roughly where the boundary was. So you'd have to go a bit further beyond that to allow space to put an acoustic fence in there. And if you wanted to plant, then again, you probably wouldn't want to have the planting on the inside of the fence, because you wouldn't be able to see it. And I don't actually whether planting itself would provide the same level of acoustic protection as an acoustic fence.
Yeah, that was an additional thought to go forward, not necessarily to be as a condition, the planting. The condition is to move them sufficiently such that we can get an acoustic barrier. That was where I thought we should be with that condition.
Okay, we'll hold that till we get to the end then, as an additional condition. Where are we now? Councillor Vickers.
Councillor Toy has more or less summed up my thoughts on this too. I think that an acoustic fence is a good idea, and I wouldn't like to have those rackety containers right up against my boundary, and I think that they could be pushed back a few feet. I agree that you can't push them back so far that they're not visible, but a few feet so there's room for the fence and they're not slap bang up against his boundary. So I would support what Councillor Toy has said.
Okay, Councillor Holiday and Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree with the need to follow the environmental health suggestions on this, which pretty much concurs with what the elected members go. And I'd just like to look in the planning balance, we bring in economic and social benefits. What are the economic benefits? Because a road haulage firm has lots of drivers who are earning a good living. And what are the economic benefits to this? What are the, how many employees are there? And is Stalker Law based in Catfield or is it based somewhere else? Thank you.
I don't think we know in terms of where they're based. In terms of the employers, I don't think there's particularly
No,
anything
that's-
that's been set out in
no.
the application form that says this will provide X number of jobs. We don't have that. But I mean, in terms of obviously there are some benefits in terms of storage. There are lots of households that do use storage facilities these days because lots of them don't have space in their own homes for domestic clutter that we all seem to accumulate. But so yeah, they do have some benefits, but okay. Councillor Fitch-Stokes.
Yeah, can I just clarify something? Did Councillor Toy make a proposal or just a comment?
So it was a proposal to make a change, which I was going to include in the final
Okay.
vote, rather
And
than
that-
a number of votes on small changes. We'll do the whole thing at the end. You're happy with that?
I actually would like to make a proper proposal, I mean, full proposal if you like, because I've listened very carefully to the two local members. And I think what they are saying was absolutely right. So if we can incorporate their proposed conditions, I'm prepared to propose approval as long as those conditions are incorporated.
So those conditions are acoustic fencing.
Yeah.
Security fencing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the hours of operation. I'm going to take officer advice on that one. Well, I read the suggestion of no operation on a Sunday. I think that's what the suggestion was. And I think that's what the environmental health officer is, what was also suggesting. So it would be in line with the environmental health officer recommendations. Obviously, we suggested slightly different to that, but obviously it's your decision as committee and we respect that decision. In terms of the security fencing or the security measures to restrict access into the site, obviously we don't know what they look like or what they would be. So we'll need to sort of perhaps get some details from the applicant as part of a condition to secure that. Because we don't want the creation of a sort of a Fort Knox, so to speak. It's not really going to look particularly attractive in the landscape, but something that's sensible and proportionate. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily prevent people from getting access to the site, because if there's a key code to get in, they'll try and get in out of hours. So there may be a need for a discussion with the applicant about how they can manage people using that facility. Because if there is a condition restricting hours of use, then they will need to adhere to that, or we'll be taking enforcement action. So, yeah. Okay.
You could perhaps expand condition 7 about no use of the development and no visitors to the development as well. So that would clarify that if there's any ambiguity as to what exactly use of the development entails.
Thank you. That's very useful. Okay, so we have a proposal from Councillor Fitch-Stokes to amend as approved, subject to the additional conditions. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Toy. Okay, can we go to a vote then, please? Laura?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beatty. Councillor Brown. Councillor Fitch-Stokes. Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Holiday. Councillor MacDonald.
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
4.
Councillor Ringer.
4.
Councillor Toy.
4.
And Councillor Vickers. That is unanimous, 10 votes for.
Thank you. As usual, officers will do the final wording for the conditions. Right, we move then to agenda item 8. This is land at Dam Hill Plantation, TPO/24/1036. Can I just say to members, it's Bruno's last day working for the council today, so I just wanted to make members aware that he's going to South Norfolk, so thank you for your service, Bruno.
I'd just like to say that it was a pleasure to work with you all.
Thanks, Bruno.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank
Thank
you. Best of luck for the future, Bruno.
Thank you.
Are you ready, Imogen?
Thank you, Chair. I just need to make a slight amendment to my report. The final recommendation is to confirm the order without modifications. So that's my bad. So this presentation is about a provisional woodland tree preservation order that we've served at Dam Hill in Edgefield. The site is situated south of Holt, south of Holt Country Park, and you can see the outline of the site on the right-hand screen. I always like to go into the historical pictures because I think it gives the site some context. You can see the tithe map and the ancient woodland feature there in compartment 16, and the RAF map showing that it's still there in the 40s to 60s, with Edgefield Hall there on the right. And then moving into the early 2000s, you can see the east compartment is now planted up with a conifer plantation. So there's quite distinct areas of the woodland, with the west of the site conifer, and the east of the site more ancient woodland with these ponds that have created in the middle section of that woodland area. And you can see the site is in the context of, quite a special area. We've got Holt Lows SSSI, which is nationally important, county wildlife sites to the north, and geodiverse sites, which are all designated, along with the Glaven Valley Conservation Area. With the River Glaven there situated diagonally across the screen, and there's an outfall of this site to the north into the Glaven itself. So here we've got a street view picture of the site entrance, Edgefield Hill. It's quite a fast road, corners, the visibility is tricky, and the road is busy. And the site changed hands in around 2021, and we had then a series of planning applications that are set out in the report. This prior notification was for the erection of agriculture forestry store unit, and this was deemed that we didn't have enough information to determine whether that was acceptable. And there's the view of the area where that unit would be situated, and it's about 20+ meters long, and I think about 7 meters deep. And so then another prior notification application came in, and it illustrated a bit more of the arboricultural constraints. And you can see there are a number of trees there affected by the proposals. And at this point, the applicants or the owners, sorry, had created a car park and access to that forestry unit. This was then also refused because of lack of information. So another prior notification application came in, and again, further details of the trees, but also didn't really illustrate all the trees on site. And you can see on the picture, a whole row of alders going around the edge of the lakes, which aren't actually shown on the arboricultural information. And it was at this point the planning officers and I noticed that actually this engineering works to create the access road had caused some damage to trees. It also, the site is also subject to 2 separate felling licenses. So the compartment to the east in the so that's actually the west, isn't it? The forestry was the conifer forestry block to thin those conifers actually has been really positive management to the site and has created a much better compartment structure. And then we've had a subsequent felling license to the east where the more ancient trees are situated. And then we had an exemption certificate that was submitted, and you can see where the location of the Forestry Welfare Unit is down in the south of the site, where we have glamping huts that have been erected, and further camping up in the north. And there's no doubt it's a very beautiful site. You know, the lakes are very lovely, the woodland setting's very special, and it's a very tranquil, beautiful site. There's no question about it. And those shepherd's huts have arrived, and enforcement action is being taken, and I think we have an appeal against that action. And you can see the engineering works to create access to that, which the owners of the site have indicated that, you know, quite significant repairs to the dam were needed. Here you can see where that damage has occurred to an ancient pollarded oak tree. And it's important to point out these ancient and veteran trees are classed in the NPPF as irreplaceable habitat. And that level change has cut through a significant proportion of those roots, and it will undoubtedly affect that health and long-term viability of the tree. And here you can see where the water infrastructure for the glamping provisions has been put in. And again, more root damage where, you know, those level changes have occurred very close to trees, you know, that are in the conservation area. So, you know, willful damage has occurred here by these engineering works. So to conclude, recommend that the order is confirmed to not only recognise that this area is, you know, a critical connection, it's a wider wildlife corridor into the wider landscape. You know, it has come under more positive management with the new managers and owners of the site, but these camping activities are, in our view, causing harm, and we want to not only protect the woodland now, but on into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no town and parish speaker, no objecting speaker, no supporting speaker. Local member then, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, members. And this site as a whole is causing some frustration and concern and considerable interest in the vicinity and at Edgefield Parish Council, which I regularly attend. It is a site sandwiched between the SSSI at Holt Lowes and the Holt Country Park. I'm surprised it hasn't got you know, a designation beyond the Glaven Valley Conservation Area designation that it currently has. The River Glaven is one of less than, 200 chalk streams worldwide. It's a very sensitive environment, and no doubt fed into the thinking of Chris Packham when he reported to us that North Norfolk is the third most biodiverse area in the UK. So this is a special habitat. Anybody that goes there would not fail to realise that. I can't understand how an applicant can, or an operator, should I say, excavate and carry out engineering works in such close proximity to an ancient tree. I'm not sure what the metric is for oak, but Natural England say that an ancient tree, if it's a birch, is 150 years old. And if it's a yew, it can be up to 800 years old. So they are irreplaceable if damaged, and it remains to be seen how this damage will play out in the longer term, and whether other, should I say, interested parties in sanctioning this sort of activity might be called upon to take interest in further action moving forward. I'm going to ignore the fact that the owner is no stranger to our enforcement team, and is in fact no stranger to enforcement teams in other district authorities as well. That doesn't play into the thinking. I'm concentrating purely on the damage to the trees which the senior landscape officer has identified, and I thank her for a report on this. And I would have no hesitation in proposing the recommendation to introduce or impose, should I say, a temporary tree preservation order. I stress temporary. And why would you not do that in these circumstances? And I think we need to send a message from this committee to what the wider community that this sort of activity is not tolerated, not to be tolerated in our district. So I propose that, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, councillor Brown, we have served a provisional order. The recommendation is to confirm the order today, so we're deciding if.
So moving from temporary to permanent.
Yeah.
I apologise, that's my misunderstanding. Yeah, sorry. So yes, I wholly recommend approval.
That's a toy.
Nothing to say, except that I would second that proposal. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Vickers.
Just an inquiry, Imogen, is the oak salvageable? Will it survive?
Time will tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very sad if it doesn't.
Mr. Rigger.
Thank you. I agree with everything that Councillor Brown said. My question is really with regards to the exemption license and how that works with the works that have gone on. The engineering works you're talking about, are they permitted within the exemption license for the shepherd hut and things on the site? And when that exemption license comes to renewal, will the damage that's been done so far be represented in some way to whoever issues that license?
Yeah, Image is looking at me, so I think she wants me to respond to that. Yeah, we get into the complex world of exemption certificates from Natural England and other processes related to permitted development. So, as I understand, there's a number of bits of development on this site, some of which may be considered permitted development, and therefore, provided they comply with the requirements, exempt from requiring permission. And there's other bits that actually do amount to development that does require a planning application. So it's obviously all under the enforcement team's radar, and I think there is a live enforcement case and appeal that's going on at this moment in time. So yeah, there are steps that have been taken in relation to that. I mean, I've got my own personal view on the exemption process. I am concerned about how licenses are given by Natural England, and often it's not for a specific site, it's to an organisation that could locate anywhere across our district. And we've got plenty of examples where you think, how did they get permission to do it? They would never normally get planning permission to do that. So how does the exemption process allow them to do something that could equally have an impact on the environment? Now, just because it's under the exemption process doesn't negate their need to submit a Regulation 77 application. So that's them asking us the question, will this result in harm to impact on European sites? So there is a process they have to go through that. And a lot of people don't know there's a process to go through for habitats regs in order to get permitted development. So we're sort of trying to publicize that process a little bit more. In this case, they have sought to pay their GI RAMS tariff. So they've made a payment to us. We're just trying to work out which bits are under which parts of that process and what the actual tariff is that they need to pay. Okay.
Can I just come back quickly on another point that Councillor Brown made was with regard to the designation of the site only being part of the Glaven Valley Conservation Area. Is a TPO the strongest we can do? Is there any scope for strengthening that in line with the sort of valuable sites which are designated as SSIs in the close proximity? Is this, the limit of it, or should we actually be proactively looking at strengthening it even further?
I agree, and I have made a representation to the Norfolk Biodiversity Information Service, who hold the records for ancient woodland. Previously, they have only captured sites larger than 5 hectares, I think it is. So they're going through a process of capturing these smaller sites, and I've raised this along with another, quite a handful of other sites that we've got in the district that aren't currently have that designation of ancient woodland, but I'm hoping that this one, because of the flora, because of the ancient trees and other indicator species, that we'll be able to include this within their data set, which will give it that higher status.
Councillor Bakey, then we'll move to the vote.
I agree with Callum and Councillor Brown. Basically, I live not very far from it. I've been there many times as a child and as a young adult as well in the past. It's a beautiful area. We need to preserve it.
Okay. We proposed by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Toy, that the recommendation is that the order be confirmed with the modification. Can we go to the vote, please, Lauren?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Beatty,
For,
Councillor Brown,
for,
Councillor Fitch-Tillett, Councillor Hankins. I was not present, apologies. Councillor Heinrich,
For.
Councillor Holiday, Councillor MacDonald,
For.
Councillor Mancini Boyle, Councillor Ringer,
For.
Councillor Toy,
For.
and Councillor Vickers. That is unanimous, 10 votes for.
Okay. You may make a comment.
Just thinking about what we just discussed on the exemption process, would you, as a committee, be comfortable with someone from the department sending a letter to Natural England raising concern about that process and the potential impacts on the environment? We have tried before, but it doesn't harm to try again. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item 10, performance management update.
Right. Okay, so page 43 of your agenda. Those of you looking in this colour, in colour, you'll see there's a slightly different colour on one of the sections. So in terms of the speed of decisions, again, we've had 3 major decisions in the month of March and 66 non-majors. Performance pretty good, 100% for majors, 95% for non-majors, and our 24-month average still leaves us top of the shop for Norfolk, excluding the courts. In terms of the quality, so this is the occasions when we have appeal decisions that are lost or allowed. You see it's red for those now. We have had 1 major decision that was allowed in Bacton. So that has brought our figures up, so to speak, in terms of number of appeals allowed. And the figure for non-majors has slightly increased. I think it was previously about 0.47. It's gone up to reflect a couple of cases we had in the last few months that were allowed by the inspectorate. But setting aside that, I mean, you can see our own sort of NNDC standard for both of those at 5%. So we aim to have no more than 5% of our appeals over our application decisions overturned at appeal as a percentage of total decisions, and we're well below the 10% government targets. So it's not nice when you lose appeals, but yeah, we're doing okay generally on it.
Any questions?
Yes, Councillor Mancini. I don't want to put you on the spot, Jeff. Could I have a word with you after the meeting regarding Hobbiton Parish Council, please?
Certainly. Okay. S106.
Microphone.
Sorry, a couple have completed, and the Milestones Hospital, former hospital section 106 is out with the applicant for approval. So that pretty non-controversial, that, and that should have completed by next month.
So, Chair, sorry to interrupt. Can I just ask regarding the agreement for Thursford Green Norfolk, how the negotiations are progressing there? Because I think there was talk about this perhaps coming back to the committee.
There are issues on that one. We have been looking at the YouTube video, and what we understood committee had resolved In a nutshell, that they're wanting it to be slightly expanded beyond perhaps what we felt the committee had resolved to be a broader base, a property for a worker. And that those issues are being discussed at the moment. It's been difficult. We've been discussing it since January, one property, which is actually taking up a lot of time compared to, the site, for example, at North Walsham, which, the 106 is motored on there. So there are issues on that one still being debated.
So if there's no compromise on the issue, presumably it will come back to the committee, will it?
I'm not sure. I think the best person to speak to is Russell Williams on that one.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
thank you, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to.
Oh,
put
no,
you
no,
on the
no,
spot, Fiona.
that's fine.
Yeah.
It's negotiations are going on, but there is the agent is not happy with the wording that was put to them in January, which we felt had followed the committee resolution.
Thank you.
If I may just add to that, just Councillor Brown, a report has already been drafted, so it's waiting in the wings should that negotiation fail to proceed. Thank you. And finally, we go to agenda item 11, appeals. Okay, well. So yeah, as you can see, we've had 4 new appeals come in since the last agenda on page 47. And happy to take particular questions on the list of cases. I'm pleased to report that we managed to get through the Ferding public inquiry a couple of weeks ago at Westfronton Scout Hut. Yeah, it's not the usual place to hold a public inquiry in a Scout Hut. It was quite surreal, but I think actually having that sort of informal setting did help bring the pressure that you have with a public inquiry down a little bit. I don't think it stopped the barrister for the other side having quite a good go at Kevin Peacock and myself as we took the stand, but yeah, so we'll hopefully hear the results of that probably in about 4 or 5 weeks' time. The inspector did say she was quite busy, but yeah, I was reasonably pleased with how the inspector ran the show. Hopefully she'll give us a good decision in that regard. But yeah, so that was not often we have public inquiries, so it's thank you to Fiona and our counsel Jack Parker, who was very good at sort of dealing with the other side. Yeah, okay, so happy to take any questions. We have had one appeal decision at Baconsthorpe, and the inspector pretty much threw the kitchen sink at that decision. I think every policy, I think she found that they found it was against policy. So it was interesting, and there was a habitats regs issue that was brought to attention as well in terms of possible nutrient impacts and GIRAMS impacts. So it was interesting, particularly given that there's another campsite not too far away from this, which was quoted back to the inspector. But yeah, interesting that some inspectors are making this type of decision. So we'll have to read through that carefully and learn and see what implications that means for the rest of the cases we have on the books at the moment.
Thanks. I just wanted to touch on that one actually, because it goes back to the whole policy mess that is exemption licenses, because what you see there is already on the site and largely covered by an exemption license, much to the unhappiness of local residents and parish council there. And perhaps if we're considering as a development committee putting a letter to Natural England, this case may well be something that you might want to reference. I know local residents have actually been contacting directly Natural England, and perhaps Jeff, I might share some of that correspondence with you, if that's useful.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Okay, in that case, given there's no private business, close the meeting at 10:43. Thank you.